Magic Tree House, Book Number 10, Ghost Town at Sundown by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 1, How Wild? Jack and Annie were sitting on the porch of their house. Annie was gazing down the streets at Rocky Woods. Jack was reading a book. I have a feeling we should check the woods again, said Annie. Why? Said Jack without looking up. The rabbit's hopping by, said Annie. So, we've seen rabbit before. Not like this one, said Annie. What did you mean? Jack stood up and looked with her. He saw the rabbit with very long legs hopping down the streets. Soon, the rabbit left the sidewalk and headed into the woods. He's a sign, said Annie. A sign of what? Said Jack. That Morgan's back, said Annie. She jumped off the porch. Come on! But what about dinner? Jack says. Dad said it would be ready soon. Don't worry, said Annie. You know when we leave the treehouse, time stops. She ran across their yard. Jack pulled on his backpack. Back in 10 minutes, he called through the screen door. Then he followed Annie. They hurried down the streets and into the Frog Creek woods. The sun was setting above the trees. There he is, said Annie. The rabbit was standing in the ray of sunlight. When he saw them, he took off. Jack and Annie followed the rabbit until he vanished behind the tallest tree. I told you, see, said Annie, panting. She pointed up at the tree. Morgan Le Fay was waving to them from the magic tree house high in the branch. Jack and Annie waved back. Since always, Jack was very happy to see the entrance librarian again. Come on up, she called. Jack and Annie started up the rope ladder. They climbed up to the treehouse. We followed the strange rabbit here, said Annie. It is your friends? Is he your friends? Perhaps, said Morgan. She smiled mysteriously. I have many old friends, including us, said Annie. Morgan laughed. That's right. How are you? Said Jack. I'm still having problem with Moreland, said Eastern States, which leave me a little time to do my real work. But soon you both will become master librarians, and that will be a big help to me. Jack smiled. He was going to be a master librarian who traveled through the times and space. It was almost too good to believe. Are you ready to solve another riddle? Asked Morgan. Yes, said Jack and Annie together. Good, said Morgan. First, you need this for research. She pulled a book from her robes and handed it to Jack. It was a book that helped them on their journey. The title of the book was Day of the Wild West. On the cover was the picture of the western town on the prairie. Wow, said Annie, the Wild West. Jack took a deep breath. Just how wild, he wondered. Morgan reached into the folds of her robes again and pulled out the scrolls. She handed it to Annie. Read this when the treehouse lands, she says. Is it a riddle? Asked Jack. Yes, said Morgan. Then you only have 2 more to solve. Are you ready to go? Jack and Annie nodded. Annie pointed to the picture on the cover of the Wild West book. I wish we could go there, she said. The wind started to blow. Goodbye, said Morgan. Good luck. The treehouse started to spin. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. The treehouse spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. Morgan Le Fay was gone. The fly buzzed around his head. Chapter 2. Rattlesnake Flats. The air was hot and dry. Jack and Annie picked outside. The treehouse has landed in the long tree on the prairie. The sun was low in the sky. Right in front of them was the town from the cover of the book. In real life, it looked empty and spooky. To one side of the town was a patch of ground with several tombstones. That's creepy, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. He took a deep breath. What our riddle says. Annie handed up the ancient scroll. She unrolled it. Then she and Jack read together. One of the blue, my lonely boys, called out to you. What am I? Jack pushed his glasses into place and read the riddle again to himself. There must be a mistake, he said. Am I? It's written twice. Well, I don't hear any voice now, Annie said as she looked out the window. There was no human sound at all, only the buzzing of flies and the whistling of the dry wings. Let's look at the book, Jack said. He opened the book. The pages were yellow with age. He found a picture of the town and read the word beneath it right out loud. In the 1870s, Rattlesnake Flat was the rift stop for stagecoach that carried passengers from Santa Fe, New Mexico, to Fort Worth, Texas. When the creek dried up, everyone left. By 1880, it was a ghost town. Wow, a ghost town, said Annie, her eyes wide. Let's take a quick look around, said Jack, so we can leave before dark. Right, said Annie. Let's hurry. She started down the rope ladder. Jack put the old book into his pack. Then he followed Annie down the ladder. They stood by the trees and looked about. Tumbleweeds blew across the dry ground. Suddenly, something jumped past them. Yikes! They both said. But it was just a rabbit, a lone, long-legged rabbit hopping past them. Hey, he's just like a rabbit we saw at home, said Jack. Yeah, the rabbit must have been a sign of something to come, said Annie. The rabbit hopped across the prairies and out of sight. I better take notes, said Jack. He reached into his backpack and pulled out his notebook and pencil. He wrote, Rabbit with long legs. What the sound? Said Annie. What sound? Asked Jack. The rattling sound, said Annie. Jack looked up. What? He said. There! Annie pointed to the rattlesnake. It was about 100 feet away. It was coiled up and rattling. Jack took a run look at the snake and ran. Annie ran too. They ran past the gravelly yard and right into the ghost town. I guess that's why this town is called Rattlesnake Flats, said Annie when they stopped. Jack looked around. The town was hardly big enough to call the town. There was one unpaved street and a few old buildings. It was quiet, too quiet. Look, a store, said Annie. She pointed to the building. The faded sign said General Stores. Let's look inside. Maybe the answer of the riddle is in there. Jack and Annie stepped onto the porch. The wooden board cracked loudly. The door has fallen off its hinges. Then they peeked inside. The air was thick with dust. Spider webs hang from the ceilings. Maybe we shouldn't go in, said Jack. But what if the answer is here, said Annie. Just take a quick look. Jack took a deep breath. Okay. He and Annie tiptoed into the stores. Look, said Annie. She picked up the pair of rusty spars. Careful, said Jack. He poked at other stuff in the stores. An old fish stack. A rusty tin cups. The faded cylinder dated 1878. Oh, wow, said Annie. She held up 2 cowboy hats. She put one on and handed the other one to Jack. For you. It's too dusty, said Jack. Just blow on it, said Annie. Jack blew on his hat. A cloud of dust rose up. Jack sneezed. Just try on, said Annie. Jack put the hats on. It nearly covered his eyes. Boots, said Annie. She pointed to the row of the cowboy boots on the shelf. There's even some small ones, like our size. Here's the pair for you. She handed the boots to Jack. There's not ours, he says. I know, but just try them on, said Annie. Jack turned his boots upside down and shook them as hard as he could. What are you doing? Annie asked, pulling up another pair of boots. Checking for spirits, Jack says. Jack, Annie laughed. Try them on. Jack sighed. He put off his sneakers. He pushed his feet into his boots. He pushed and pushed. The boots were really steep. Finally, he got his feet inside. Then he tried to walk. Ow, he said. Forget it. He started to pull off the boots. What's that? Annie says. Jack froze. Piano music, said Annie. Maybe it's a voice in the riddle. Come on. Jack threw the sneakers into his backpack and hobbled after Annie. Chapter 3. Player Piano. Outside, the sad tunes played on. It's coming from there, said Annie. She crept toward the buildings that had signs with the word hotels on it. Jack climbed after her. Annie slowly pushed open the swinging door. They peeked inside. The fading daylight lit the piano in the corner of the room. The keys were moving up and down, but nobody was there. Yikes, whispered Annie. The ghost playing piano. Suddenly the key was stilled. The air got very cold. No way, said Jack. There's no such thing as a ghost. We saw one in the ancient Egypt, said Annie. Yeah, but that was ancient Egypt, said Jack. Even so, his heart raced. I'll look it up. Jack pulled out the Wild West book. He found the picture of the piano. He read aloud. Player piano were popular in the Old West. The piano played on automatically when someone pumped it over pedals. Later, with the help of the electricity, the piano played all by itself. Whew! Jack closed the books. I knew there was an answer, he says. It must be electric, and somehow it came on. I don't know they has electricity in the Wild West, said Annie. They didn't, said Jack. He looked at Annie. Oh man, let's get out of here, he said. Jack and Annie back out the hotels. When they get outside, they heard another sound. Horse hoof thumping against the hard ground. The cloud of dust seemed to be moving toward the town. As it got closer, Jack saw 3 riders. They were herding the small bands of horses. Hide, Jack said. Where? Said Annie. Jack looked around wildly. He saw 2 barrels outside the hotels. There, he said. Jack and Annie hurried into the empty barrels. Jack climbed inside one and tried to search down. His head wouldn't fit. His hats wouldn't fit. He jumped out of the barrels and threw his hats into the hotels. Mine's too, said Annie. Jack grabbed her and threw it. Then he scrambled back into the barrel, just in time. Jack heard the horses' thunders into the town. He peeked through the cracks in the barrel of and saw the blur of cowboy and horses go by. Wow, wow, wow! Men shouted. Jack heard the horses come to the house. They stamped and snorted. All he could see was shadow through the cracks. Dust covered Jack. He has to sneeze. He pinched his nose. The crack bed must be had dried up, the cowboy yelled. This town's a ghost. Yep, it's giving me a shivers, said another. Let's camp over the rise. Jack really has to sneeze now. He pinched his nose tighter, but he couldn't stop the sneeze. He let out the choke. Achoo! What was that? Someone says. Just then the loud wimpy slid the air. Jack saw beautiful horses wheeled up. She has no riders or saddle, just rope around her neck. She was as red as the sunset. She has wild black manes in the white stars above her eyes. We can't keep fighting this one, boss, the cowboy yelled. Yeah, she wants her coat, another says. We shouldn't have left him behind. He's too slow, the growly shout said. We'll sell her when we cross the boulders. That's terrible, thought Jack. He knew Annie must be upset too. He just hoped that she wouldn't jump out of her barrels. But the cowboy pulled the red horse away. The ground rang from the pounding of hoofs as they galloped off. Jack and Annie stood up. They watched the rider disappear into the dust. The pounding faded away. All was quiet again, except for the lazy buzzing of flies. There were millions of that horse, Annie said in the low, angry voice. I know, but there was nothing we could do, said Jack. His boots were killing him. He climbed out of his whittles. Man, we have to get it off, he says. Jack sat down on the porch on the hotels. He grabbed the foot of one boot and pulled. Jack, said Annie, I think there is something we can do. What? Jack looked up. The small horse was running down the road. He was as red as the wild mother horse. He has the same black mane and white stars above his eyes. The rope was around his neck. He looked very lost. Chapter 4. Hands up. It's a colt, said Annie. He's looking for his mother. She ran toward the wild-eyed little horse. Wait, called Jack. Oh, brother. He pulled up the books out of his pack. He found the chapter titled Horses of the Wild West. He started reading. At the end of the 1800s, over the millions wild horses called mustangs wanders the west. Those tall, fast horses were descendants of runaway Spanish horses. Mustang herders captured them and sold them to the riches, breaking the wild mustang to great skills. Jack turned the page. There was a picture of the herd of horses. Two of them even looked like a beautiful mare and her coat. Hey, Annie, Jack called. You should see these pictures. Annie didn't answer. Jack looked up. Annie was trying to get close to the young mustang, but he kept luring away. Watch it, he's wild, said Jack. Annie was speaking softly to the coat. She slowly reached out and grabbed the end of his rope. Still talking to him, she led him to the barred wooden post. Stop, don't do anything, said Jack. He flipped a page of his book. He found a station called How to Treat a Horse. The basic rules on how to treat a horse are simple. A soft hand, a firm voice, and sunny attles, praise and reward. I got the rules, shouted Jack. Don't do anything before I wrote them down. Jack pulled out his notebook and pencil. He wrote horse rules. 1. Soft hands. 2. Firm voice. 3. Sunny attitude. 4. Praise. 5. Reward. Okay, listen. Jack looked up, but Annie was already sitting on the coach back. Jack froze. He held his breath. The Mustang whined and pawed around. He snorted, tossed his hands. Annie kept patting his neck and talked softly. Finally, the young horse grew still. Annie smiled at Jack. I named him Sunset, she said. Jack let out his breath. Let's go, said Annie. We have to take him to his mom. Are you nuts? Said Jack. We have to solve our riddles. It will be dark soon. And those guys were real bad guys, I could tell. We don't have any choice, said Annie. Oh, brother. Jack knew she wouldn't change her mind. Let's see what the book says. He read about more Mustangs. Wild Mustangs who live together in families. The bond between the mother and her young is very strong. His sound of distress or hunger will always bring her to him. The Mustang cannot bear to wander around. Jack roamed. He looked at Sunset. The young Mustang did have the sad look in his eyes. Okay, we'll make a plan, he says. But first, I have to get out of these boots. Jack grabbed one of his boots and pulled. Hurry, said Annie. I can't even think of these things, said Jack. He huffed and puffed and pulled. Then a deep voice stopped him cold. Hand up or I shoot. Jack got off his boots. He raised his hands into the air. So did Annie. The cowboy rode up an alley. His face was bony and thin. He was riding the gray horse and pointing six shooters. I reckon you're the smallest horse thieves I've ever come across, he says. I reckon you're the smallest horse thieves I've ever come across, he said. Magic Treehouse, Book Number 10. Ghost Town at Sundown by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 5. Slim. We're not horse thieves, said Annie. Well then, what are you doing with my horse here, he says. Some bad guys came through towns with his mother, said Annie. They left him behind because he was too slow. Yep, that must be the rustler that stole my last 5 Mustangs, the cowboy says. Who are you, said Jack. And the Mustang herders, the cowboy said. They rode through towns. Then sunset. Show up all alone, said Annie. We're taking him to his mother's. Sunset? The cowboy called. Yep, Annie smiled. I named him. The cowboy put out his 6 shooters. Well, you're pretty brave to try and rescue him, Smiley, he says. Thanks, said Annie. Jack cleared his throat. The Mustang needs his family, he says. The bond between the mother and her young is very strong. The cowboy looked at Jack. Wow, you're pretty smart to know that, Shorty. Shorty, said Jack. Even cowboys get to have a nickname, said the cowboy. What's yours, said Annie. Slim, said the cowboy. My name is Slim Coley, and this is Dusty. He patted his horse. Jack agreed. Slim was slimmed, and Dusty was dirty. So tell me, Slim says, how did you two brave, so smart young'uns end up the Rattlesnake Flats? Jack caught his breath. He don't know how to explain it. A stagecoach, said Annie. We ragged the driver to laugh off, but I think we made a mistake. Slam looked around. I say, he says. When the next stage comes through, we're leaving, said Annie. I see. said Slim. Well, I'm going to take my coat now and find the rasters. You don't hear where they were headed, did you? They said they were going to camp over the rise, said Jack. That must be over yonder, said Slim. He looked at low rays in the distance. The sun was rail-belt above it. Better get going before dark, he says. Can we go with you? Said Annie. No, we have to stay here, Jack said quickly. Now that Slim could have a sunset, Jack wanted to look for the answer to the riddle. Plus, he was still wanted to take off his boots. Geordie's right to be scared, Slim said to Annie. There is no job for longings. Scared? Said Jack. Oh, please, I want to go, said Annie. Slim looked at Jack. And what do you want, Shorties? For starters, he wanted Slim to stop calling him Shorties, and he wanted Slim to think he was great. Sure, I want to go, said Jack. What about your stagecoach? Said Slim. It's not coming until tomorrow, Annie said quickly. Well, Slim scratched his chin. I reckon I used some brave small help, but you have to do everything I say. We will, said Annie. Can I ride Sunset? I wouldn't say yes, and to many kids, Smiley, but you seem to have a knack with horses, said Slim. Now hang on tight to his name. I'll just put him along beside me. Slim slapped the rope off the post. Then he held his hands out to Jack. Put your foot in the stirrups, Shorties, and grab my hands, said Slim. Jack did as Slim says. Slim pulled him into the front of his saddle. Jack held on to the saddle's horns. Sit tight, said Slim. It's not far. Slim snapped his reins. Dusty took off with Sunset right behind him. Jack bounced up and down, his boots hard. The sunset blind him. Giddy up, said Slim. Giddy up, said Annie. The horses galloped across the prairies, dust flying from the hoofs. Achoo! Jack sneezed as he bounced along to the sunsetting sun. Chapter 6. Split the Winds. The sky was dark by the time they got to the rise. The wind was cold, almost cold. Wow, said Slim. Dusty slowed to the house. There were camps down there, Slim said in a low voice. In that patch of trees. Jack saw the campfire at the bottom of the slope. He saw the horses gathered in the dark clumps. One out of the loud whinny. Hear that? Says Slim. The mare. She senses Sunset is nearby. The mare's whined again. Sound like she's tied to the trees, says Slim. I think the rest of the horns are loose. What's your plan? Whispered Jack. Smiley, you stay here and guard Sunset, says Slim. Right, said Annie. Shorty, you and I ride down near their camp, said Slim. You keep Dusty quiet while I cut mare loose. How do you keep the horse quiet? Wondered Jack. Once the mare loose, she'll break for Sunset, said Slim. Then you and Sunset take off, Smiley. Got it, said Annie. Then we'll split the wind, said Slim. What's that mean? Wondered Jack. Till we got to Blue Canyon, said Slim. Where's that? Wondered Jack. All set? Any questions? Asked Slim. Nope, said Annie cheerfully. Yep, about millions, thought Jack. Okay, partners, said Slim. See you soon, Smiley. Come on, Shorty. Have fun, said Annie. Fun? Thought Jack. Is she nuts? Our lives are at stake. Slim snapped his reins. Dusty started down the rise. There way was lit by the nearly 4 moons and the million stars. Maybe now I can ask Slim some questions, thought Jack. But just then, voice came from the Russells' camp. They were mean voice, followed by mean laughter. The chill went through Jack. Dusty held it. This is far enough, whispered Slim. Slim slipped off of Dusty. Keep him here, Slim whispered to Jack, and keep him quiet. Wait, whispered Jack. He needed more information, but Slim was gone. Jack gripped the reins and held his breath. He hoped Dusty wouldn't do anything. For a moment, Dusty was still, but then he snorted and began to walking. Oh no, thought Jack. He tried to think of the rules on how to treat horses. He remembered the soft hands, the flame voice. He patted Dusty softly. Whoa, she says firmly. To his surprise, Dusty froze and was quiet. Jack remembered another rule, the sunny attitude. She patted Dusty again. Don't worry, whispered Jack. Everything's going to be fine. Just then the loud whinny came from the herd of mustangs. They began to move up the moonlit slopes. Hey, the horses, Rustler shouted. The gun went up. Jack ducked. Come on, shorties, came Slim Boy. Jack looked up. Slim was riding the mares. Jack was shocked. He had thought that Slim was going back to ride Dusty. Instead, Slim rode right past him. As he got close to Annie, she took off on Sunset. The mares galloped after Sunset. Then the band of mustangs galloped after the mares. Bang! Bang! Jack snipped the reins. Go, Dusty, he says. Dusty lived after the mustangs. Jack nearly fell off. He clutched his reins in one hand and the saddle horns in the others. Bang! Bang! The roosters were on their horses now. They were getting closer. Hurry! Jack cried. Dusty cleared the rise in an awkward leaps. Jack started to slip out the saddle. He let go of the reins and tried to hold on to the saddle horns, but his weight pulled him down. He closed his eyes as he fell to the ground. Bang! Bang! Oh man, thought Jack, this is the end. He opened his eyes. Dusty was looking at him. Jack scrambled up and tried to climb back into the saddles. It was hard without Slim's help. As Jack struggled, he heard shouts from the roosters. Their horses gave high-pitched neigh. Jack looked back. The shimmering white figure was moving across the top of the ridge. The rooster's horses were pinnacling and backing away. Jack didn't have time to think about what he was seeing. He knew it might be his only chance to escape. Using all his strength, he pulled himself into the saddle. Go, Dusty, go! He shouted. Dusty took off at full gallop over the prairie. Jack held on for dear life as they slid the winds. Chapter 7, Ghost Story. Jack bounced in the saddle. He felt cool night winds against his face. He couldn't tell where they were going, but he trusted Dusty to follow the others. Finally, Dusty caught up with the herd as they began to slow down. Jack snapped his reins. Dusty came up behind Slims and Annie. Howdy, said Slims. Howdy, said Jack. Howdy, said Annie. Are you okay? Jack pushed his glasses into place. Yep, he says. You? Yep, she says. That was some good riding story, said Slims. Thanks, said Jack, smiling. He even liked being shorty now. Where we headed, boss? Jack asked Slims. Blue Cayenne, said Slims. Okay with you? Yep, said Jack. This way, said Slim. He slapped his horses and they all speeded up again. Slits cheered the herd to the left. Soon he led them through the deep, narrow passes. Finally, they came to the boxy open space, surrounded by walls and rocks, and lit by the moonlight. Were crowds of mustangs, hares, and blue cayenne, smiled Slim says. He got off his horse. He helped Jack down. Annie slid up Sunset. Take him to his ma, Slim told Annie. Annie led Sunset to the mares. In the moonlight, the two mustangs rubbed against one another and neighed. As Jack patted Dusty's damp neck, he remembered the last two rules, praise and rewards. Thanks, he whispered to Dusty. You're great. You were super great. Slim unsaddled Dusty, then handed Jack his saddlebag. Take those over to the grassy spot. We'll came here, he said. As Jack carried the saddlebags, his boots felt stiff and tight. His legs were sore and wobbly, but he didn't mind. He threw down the saddlebooks and in his backpack, and he floated himself down. He was very tired, and he joined him. They seemed so happy to be free and together again, she says, gazing at the moonlit mustangs. Yep, said Jack. He lay down, using his backpack as pillow. Jack looked up at the stars. If we just have an answer to the riddles, everything would be perfect, he said. Yep, said Annie. Hey, Slim, he called. I have a question for you. Shoot, said Slim. Do you know the answer of this riddle? Jack asked. Out of the blue, my lonely voice called out to you. What am I? Slim was silent for a moment, then said, Sorry, Shorty, don't know that one. Jack heard sang. That's okay, he said. We don't need her. I have a question too, said Annie. Why does the piano in the hotel play by itself? I do know the answer to that one, said Slim. What is it? Said Annie. It's the limestone lock, said Slim. He's the ghost of the cowboy who wandered the prairies. Jack sat straight up. I saw him, he says. I just remembered. He scared the rooster. If he hadn't come, I ever would have gotten away. Oh, yeah, Slim chuckles. Well, lucky for us. Limestone locks sometimes like to help folks out. Slim threw his saddle down next to Jack's and Danny and sat against it. Years ago, Limestone Luke has the girl who he has just crazy about, says Slim. She couldn't take the Wild West, though, so she went back east. What happened then? Asked Jack. Luke went loco. Every night he showed up at the hotels and played the piano. He played Red River Valley over and over. Then one night he just vanished into the prairies and was never seen alive again. His bones were found years later, but folks say he's close to return to the hotel piano to play Red River Valley. It goes like this. Slim took out the harmonica. He began to play songs. It was the same sad song Jack and Annie had heard in the hotels. Jack laid back down and listened to the lonesome tones. The coyote howls in the distance. The horses stirred in the dark. I better pick some notes, thought Jack, but he didn't write a word before he fell asleep. He didn't even take off his boots. Chapter 8. Who am I? The fly buzzed by Jack's ears. He slapped it away. Jack opened his eyes. The sun was high above the Kayan walls. He had slept a long time. Slim and Annie were sitting by the fire, drinking from the tin cup. Coffee, biscuit? Annie asked Jack. Where did you get them? Said Jack. The cowboy always carried biscuits and a carton of coffee, said Slim. He walked over and gave Jack a biscuit and a cup of coffee. It's hard as a rock, Slim said, and bitter as muddy river waters, but the cowboy takes what he can get. Jack took a bite and sipped. The biscuit was very hard and the coffee was very bitter, but that was okay with Jack. Since Cowboy didn't mind, he didn't mind either. I saddle up Dusty, Slim says, and take and take you back to town to catch your stage. What will you do? What will you do? Said Annie. Hand south with my heart, said Slim, Salem, and ride across the plains and round up more mustangs. While Slim settled Dusty, Jack took out his notebook and pencil. He wrote, Cowboy breakfast, bitter coffee, hard biscuits. Hey, Jory, called Slim. What are you doing? Taking notes, said Jack. What for? He liked writing things down, said Annie. Oh, yeah, said Slim. Me too. In fact, I first came out west and write a book, but one thing led to others. The next thing I knew, I'm a Mustang hunter. Slim, you should write your book, said Annie, and let the Mustang go free. Think so, said Slim. They looked at the gazing wild horse. I know so, said Annie. Yep, said Jack. Your book should be about the Wild West, Slim. Slim kept staring at his horse. Maybe you're right, he says. I could settle in Lamies and ride there. We wouldn't have to chase after rustlers anymore. Slim turned back to Jack and Annie. Yep, I think I'll be the rider. Let's go. Before I change my mind, he says. Yay, said Annie. I'll go tell them. She jumped up and ran to the Mustang. Jack packed his backpack, while Slim packed his saddlebag. Then Slim and Jack climbed onto Dusty. They rode over to Annie, who was stroking Sunset next. I told him he as free as the wind now, said Annie. Sound good, says Slim. Give me your hand, Smiley. Slim pulled Annie onto Dusty. She sat in front of Jack. Slim snapped his rein. Dusty started up. The sunset was hot as Dusty climbed out of the canyon. When they reached the top, they peered down at the canyon floors. The Mustang pranced playfully, their coats shining in the hazy light. They found their way out soon, Slim says. Then cut across the prairies. Yell goodbye to your pals, Smileys. Stay with your mother, Sunset, shouted Annie. Goodbye. One of the blue, the voice called. Bye. Annie gasped. Who said that? She asked. The ghost? Nope, said Jack. It was just an echo. It caused by the sound bouncing off the canyon walls. Slim cupped his hands around his mouth. Who am I? I shouted. Am I? Come the distant voice. Oh man, Jack said softly. That's the answer to Morgan's riddle, said Annie. Echo! She and Jack said together. Jack looked at Slim. You know the answer last night, he says. Slim just smiled and snapped his ring. Let's go, partners, he says. Chapter 9. Lonesome Locks. The sun was low in the skies when they reached Rattlesnake Flat. Just let us off in front of the hotel, said Annie. You sure the stage is coming through here? Said Slim. Yep, said Jack and Annie together. In front of the hotels, Slim got down from Dusty. They helped Jack and Annie down. I hope you come to the Limes and visit me, said Slim. He winked. I better be needing some help on my books. Sure, said Annie. Slim climbed back on Dusty. He looked down at Jack. You know, shorties, he says. You might be short, but you're mighty tall in the brains. Thanks, said Jack. And Smiley, Slim says, your great courage is nothing to smile about. Thanks, said Annie. Good luck with your writing, Slim, said Jack. I'm grateful to you both for steering me straight, said Slim. I promise I'll thank you someday. Really? Said Annie. A cowboy never go back on his word, said Slim. Then he snapped his reins and Dusty loafed down the street. Bye, Slims, yelled Annie. Slim coldly turned one last time. He waved his hat. "So long, partners," he called. Then he rode off into the sunset. Jack allowed a deep sigh. "Okay, I'm ready to take my boots off now," he says. "Me too," said Annie. They sat down on the porch of the hotels. They started pulling off their boots. "There!" Jack got them both up. He wiggled his toes. He took his sneakers out of his pack and pulled them on. Annie put her on too. "Man, sneakers never felt so good," said Jack. Suddenly, the sound of the piano drifted through the air. "Land some looks," said Annie. Jack grabbed his pack. He and Annie crept across the porch. They pushed open the swinging door. The piano was playing Red River Valley. Sitting on the piano stool was the dim but shimmering shape of the cowboy. Just then the ghost of Lonesome looked at Jack and Annie. He waved shimmering hands. Jack and Annie waved back. Then the ghost of Lonesome Lake faded away. Cool air whipped past Jack and Annie. They both shivered. "Oh man, let's go," breathed Jack. They leaped and dashed off the dusty road. They ran across the cracked ground and past the graveyard. Then they ran until they reached the trees with a magic treehouse in it. Annie grabbed the rope ladder. She hurried up, and Jack followed. They were out of breath when they got inside the treehouse. Jack grabbed the ancient scrolls. She unrolled it. "Yay!" she said. The scroll has one glowing word on it. "Echo." "We got it right," said Annie. Jack grabbed the Pennsylvania book. He pointed to the picture of the Frog Creek Woods. "I wish we could go there," he says. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 10. Echo from the Past. Jack and Annie looked outside. The sunset had slipped behind the trees of the Frog Creek Woods. Annie still held the ancient scrolls. She put it in the corners, next to the scroll from their ocean trip. "You just 2 more to go," she whispered. "Yep," said Jack. He unzipped his bag. He pulled out the Day of the Wild West. He put it on top of the stack of the books. "Ready?" he said. Annie was staring at the books. Her mouth dropped open. "What's wrong?" asked Jack. Annie just kept staring. "Have you gone nuts?" said Jack. Annie pointed to the Wild West books. "Read the cover," she said. Jack picked the book up. He read the title aloud. Day of the Wild West. He looked at Annie. "So?" "Keep reading," said Annie. The author name was below the title. It was a smaller letter. Jack read Slim Coley. Jack gasped. His mouth dropped open, and he and Annie stared at the word from the long moments. "Oh man," whispered Jack, "we were using Slim's books, the books he wrote after he left us." Jack and Annie shook their heads with wonder. Jack opened Slim's book. He took out the title page. At the bottom of the page, he read, "Texas Press, Dallas, 1895. Jack turned the page. He read the judges. "With thanks to Smiley and Shirley's, 2 strangers who changed my life." Jack looked at Annie. Slim did his book to us, he said. "Yep," said Annie. She smiled. Jack placed Slim's book back on the stack of books. Then he and Annie left the treehouse and climbed down the ladder. As they started through the woods, the trees were alive with bird sound and felt softly and most. "Rock Creek seems so peaceful," said Jack. "No runners, no rustlers, no ghosts." "Yeah, but no Slim's Coley either," said Annie sadly. "I know," said Jack. "But when you read his books, it's like he still talking to us." "Oh, right," said Annie. "You mean it's like an echo from the past?" "Yeah," said Jack softly. "Wow." Just then, out of the blue, A voice called, "Jack, Annie!" "It's Dad," said Annie. "Coming!" she and Jack shouted. Then they ran all the way home through the long shadow of the setting sun. They ran all the way home through the long